People don't feel that he's taking it seriously. I think for Democrats, there are complaints that he's not pushing the sorts of reforms that they want to see. And for everyone else, they feel that he's ignoring the issue and relying on tropes and other issues to sort of deflect what's really happening.
Welcome to Reporter's Notebook, where we talk to the Washington Examiner's top journalists about the stories breaking on their beats. I'm Jim Antle. I'm joined today by White House reporter Katherine Doyle. Katherine, immigration's kind of been a slow-burning issue for President Biden throughout his whole term. Border crossings, apprehension numbers have been pretty high throughout his whole term. But his conflict with his two favorite Republican governors, Governor Ron DeSantis, Florida, Governor Greg Abbott of Texas, seems to have really brought this back to the forefront. Talk a little bit about the busing and flying and the words that are also flying between the White House and these governors.
So already immigration is a highly combustible issue, and we're cruising towards the midterms at this point. The issue, the way that it's come up most recently is with these flights of migrants from Texas to Democratic enclaves across the country that Governor Ron DeSantis has recently organized. The White House has been sort of dismissive of the issue. Biden quipped about Governor DeSantis visiting Delaware over reports that he would soon be sending migrants to Biden's home state. And Kamala Harris has been saying that the border is secure. I mean, we've had more than 2 million crossings this year, and polls show that voters don't really agree with that, and that it's an issue of concern across the political spectrum. So as we get closer to the elections, it's likely to be a problem for Democrats, and it's likely to be a problem in the coming year if Republicans take the House.
And Biden's numbers on this have been in the 30s and have been pretty bad for a long time now. This has been an issue where it's one of the issues where he's least popular, his handling of immigration and the border.
People don't feel that he's taking it seriously. I think for Democrats, there are complaints that he's not pushing the sorts of reforms that they want to see. And for everyone else, they feel that he's ignoring the issue and relying on tropes and other issues to sort of deflect what's really happening.
So, I mean, after the vice president gave the interview where she said the border was secure, we've seen some migrants, dropped near her door. Obviously, Martha's Vineyard became a destination. That's obviously a playground of a lot of affluent liberals, a summer vacation home for a lot of high-profile Democrats. Before that, it was mainly a lot of sanctuary cities, self-designated sanctuary cities that were the destinations when Republicans were kind of trying to make this point. White House, though, has really tried to push back and say that this is an inhumane way to be treating these migrants.
Yep, they say that the use of migrants as a political tool in this way is inhumane, and that it's something that Republicans shouldn't be doing. They are unwilling to acknowledge really some of the arguments that the Republican governors are making, and say that there are other ways to handle it.
Pawn is their favorite word for this. They're using the migrants as political pawns.
Yeah, that's what they're saying. And other prominent Democrats, Gavin Newsom, for instance, recently criticized the flights, comparing it to human trafficking, and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton made a similar comparison.
A former presidential candidate and perhaps a future presidential candidate weighing in on these things. So that's not the only issue that President Biden has sort of been catching some criticism on. He gave one of his very rare sit-down interviews with the press, and another thing he did that sort of raised headlines is he declared the pandemic is over. The pandemic has been sent to Martha's Vineyard for the rest of the year. So talk a little bit about why, given that a lot of attitudes about the pandemic have relaxed in recent months, why was that a controversial statement for him to make?
It's a problem for the Biden administration, who are still pressing for funding for vaccination pushes, for coronavirus treatment pushes, and who still have the pandemic emergency powers in effect, and who are who might wish to renew them once they expire in October. It's also a problem for their immigration policies. At the moment, they're reliant on Title 42 to help expel migrants at the border, though they say that they would like that authority to lapse.
Right.
But it's helping them at the current level to maintain some method to return migrants while they've taken away other policies that allowed them to return people across the border.
And student loans obviously was a major, when Biden wanted to unilaterally forgive a certain amount of student loan debt. One of the reasons he claimed to have the statutory authority to do this is there's this national pandemic emergency going on.
That too, and they've extended the hiatus on payments as well, which is also reliant on the pandemic authorities.
So there's been a problem where Democrats have not always wanted the president and the vice president to go campaign for them. A lot of times when because Biden and Harris and the cabinet are going to go on a national tour, mostly to tout their own legislative initiatives, but also it's a little bit of a midterm election, get out the vote thing, and Biden and Harris can do that under the Hatch Act. But a lot of people would be missing when they would show up at their states. A lot of people running for re-election in competitive races. Maybe they're going to Martha's Vineyard. But now we are starting to see, with Biden's numbers up a little bit, still not great, but they're up a little bit, and particularly they're up with Democrats. You're starting to see some Democrats say that they would be willing to campaign with the president. Stacey Abrams is one. I mean, John Fetterman finally made an appearance with Biden. Has the dynamic changed?
This week, Stacey Abrams said she'd welcome Biden and Harris on the campaign trail with her in Georgia, where she's running for governor, which is a shift. In January, when Biden was in the state for remarks for a push on voting rights legislation, which is one of her major issues, she wasn't there. She said she had a conflict and wasn't able to attend the event. So now that she is now that she's welcoming it, it shows her coming around to it, and she's trailing her opponent in the race. And either she thinks that Biden and Harris will be a boost with certain voters, or maybe she thinks that the voters that are supporting her, it won't matter too much to them.
Right, that's always sort of the dilemma, is that obviously Biden has some juice with Democratic base voters, and that's probably gotten better as his approval ratings have gone up, because that seems to be disaffected liberals are a big part of why his numbers have gone up, and they're happy about recent congressional successes and things like that. But obviously there are still independents and swing voters, and Biden's numbers with independents aren't great. So it's hard to know whether this is Stacey Abrams, is becoming more desperate in her pseudo re-election race in Georgia, or is this a sign of new strength with Biden among Democratic base voters? Thank you, Katherine. You can read Katherine and the rest of our political team's coverage at washingtonexaminer.com.